I was halfway down the mountain road when my phone lit up with the kind of call that makes your stomach drop before you even answer. "Mara, honey." Mrs. Rowan whispered, her voice tight in a way I'd never heard. "There's a moving truck in your driveway. Your parents are here, and your sister, and the kids. They said you knew." I didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't speak. A cold rush spread down my spine as I pulled the phone away just long enough to stare at her words on the screen, hoping I'd misheard. But she kept going, almost apologetic. "Your mama told the movers it's family property. They're carrying boxes inside." My heart slammed against my ribs. Family property. She'd actually said it. My hands tightened around the steering wheel, the tires sliding slightly on the gravel curve as I pressed harder on the gas. The wind whipped against the windows, each gust sounding like a warning. If they had a moving truck there, if they were already inside, then this wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned. I crested the last rise before the cabin, dread swelling in my throat like something physical lodged there, choking me. And as the rooflines came into view, framed by the sharp silhouettes of the Colorado pines, I realized one terrible truth: my family was moving into my mountain house without asking. I turned into my driveway too fast, causing the gravel to spit out behind me. The first thing I saw was the massive white moving truck. Its rear door rolled up a metal ramp, angling down toward the ground. Then the bodies: my mother directing the movers with one hand on her hip, my father leaning against the truck like he owned the place, and Lydia, my older sister, carrying a box, while Owen and little Piper darted around the yard, climbing rocks, kicking pine cones, laughing as if this was some weekend adventure. My mother spotted me first and smiled like she'd been waiting for me to bring lemonade. "There she is," she called out. "Perfect timing. Help us with these boxes. We need to get the heavy stuff in first." I stepped out of my car slowly, the cold mountain air filling my lungs like ice. It took me several seconds to speak, to force my voice past the shock strangling it. "What are you doing here?" Mom waved her hand casually like I was the one being dramatic. "Mara, sweetheart, don't start. We're moving in. You live alone up here and your sister and the kids need space. This is family property." My vision tunneled for a second. "No," I said, each word shaking. "It's not." Lydia rolled her eyes as she dropped a box onto the porch with a loud thud. "God, you're so uptight. You barely use this place. We'll make it a real home." A real home. My home. Bought with my savings, my down payment, my mortgage payments. Every ounce of this cabin belonged to me. Not them, not family. Me. I took a step forward. "I didn't invite you here." "That's the thing," Dad said, brushing sawdust off his jeans like he'd just finished a day's worth of honest labor. "You don't need to invite us. We helped with the down payment. Remember, that makes this shared." I stared at him, stunned. "You gave me $1,000. The house cost $400,000. "Money is money," Mom snapped. "Don't be petty. Family doesn't nickel and dime each other." My pulse hammered in my ears. Family also doesn't break into someone's home. We didn't break in, Lydia said, flipping her hair back as she swung open the screen door. The key was in the planter, like always. "You should really hide it better." I felt sick. Owen ran toward me, then sandy blonde hair flying behind him. "Mommy said I get the room upstairs with the big window. Grandma said you won't mind." I blinked at him. Grandma said what? Piper grabbed her brother's hand and added proudly, "Grandma said this is our new home. We won't have to leave." That hit me harder than anything else. They had told the children. They had prepared them. They had created a reality where this wasn't trespassing. It was entitlement. I walked past them, needing to see the damage for myself. The cabin door was wide open. Inside, movers were carrying in a dresser I'd never seen before. A recliner that wasn't mine sat lopsided near the entryway. My pantry door hung open, boxes of their food stacked on my shelves. My refrigerator door stood ajar, filled with items they'd brought from home. Mom's leftovers, Lydia's juice boxes, Piper's yogurt pouches, everything crammed beside my groceries like I wasn't even a separate person. I swallowed hard. Stop. Everyone stop. Mom sighed loudly, annoyed, like I was the one ruining her day. Mara, please don't make a scene. You always get like this. I turned to her, feeling my face flush with a mix of shame and fury. You need to leave. We're not leaving, Lydia said flatly. Move-in day is Saturday, but we figured we'd start early. The kids were excited. Move-in day. They'd planned this so thoroughly they had a date, a plan, a schedule. And I had never even been part of the conversation. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like an old rope breaking after years of strain. For as long as I could remember, I had been the dependable one, the responsible one, the giver. The one who paid the loans that were never repaid, who covered birthday parties and grocery shortages, who babysat last minute because Lydia was overwhelmed. Every time I'd tried to say no, I'd been scolded, guilted, punished. And now this. They were stealing my home because they believed they had the right to it. I took a slow breath. I'm going inside, I said. When I come back out, I expect all of this gone. Mom actually laughed. Oh, sweetheart, you'll adjust. Families share. I didn't answer. I walked back inside, my hands trembling as I shut the front door. The cabin felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in around me. I leaned against the door, hearing the muffled voices outside, Mom giving instructions, Lydia ordering the movers to bring in more boxes, Dad telling the kids to stay where I can see you. My sanctuary was dissolving around me, and no one on the other side of that door cared. I pushed myself upright and walked into the kitchen, breathing through the tightness in my chest. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked it. I scrolled to the number I'd searched last night, hesitated, then typed it in again. A locksmith, the closest one in Cedar County. The cursor blinked on the call button. My thumb hovered. If I called, there was no going back. I closed my eyes, hearing Mom's voice from outside, shrill, confident, claiming things that did not belong to her, claiming my life as if it were a piece of furniture she could rearrange. Family adjusts. Not anymore. I pressed call. The line rang. Once, twice, 3 times. A gruff voice answered Walter's lock and key. I swallowed. Hi. I need every lock on my house changed. Today. There was a pause. Everything all right, ma'am? No, I said quietly. But it will be. I ended the call, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My legs felt unsteady, but my resolve had never been clearer. I walked to the window and looked out at the scene unfolding in my driveway, my mother waving at movers, my father pacing, Lydia leaning against her minivan, arms crossed, triumphant. Owen and Piper chasing each other around my pine trees as if they'd lived here their whole lives. None of them looked worried. None of them doubted this would work. They fully expected me to fold like I always had. But this time, something was different. I stepped back from the window and locked the door, my door. Then I whispered more to myself than to them, not for one more day. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The moment I hung up with Walter, the silence inside the cabin pressed against my ears like a physical weight. Outside, my family moved with purpose, a rhythm too organized, too practiced, too familiar for something supposedly spontaneous. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't confusion. It was a choreography. I watched them through the narrow slit of the window. Mom pointed toward the upper level as 2 movers carried a box labeled Linens, Lydia. My father walked toward the shed as if inspecting the property he owned. Lydia had her phone out, scrolling casually, confident enough to look bored. The kids darted around them, matching their energy and assumptions. No one hesitated. No one questioned. No one even looked toward my front door. They genuinely believed they belonged here. I backed away from the window. My breath shook in my chest, not out of panic anymore, but out of something darker, recognition. I'd seen this pattern before. The way Mom took over my childhood bedroom when I moved out for college, calling it shared space. The way Lydia moved into my old apartment for 3 months until she figured out her life, then stayed for 10, and never cleaned up after her kids. The way Dad expected me to contribute to car payments I didn't use, medical bills I wasn't involved in, and vacations I wasn't invited to. A taker didn't suddenly become a giver. A boundary crosser didn't learn manners overnight. This wasn't new behavior. This was simply the first time they had tried it with something big enough for me to fight back. I rubbed my temples and forced myself to breathe evenly. I needed clarity, not panic. I needed a plan. So I went upstairs to my office and pulled out the file box I kept my paperwork in. Mortgage statements, closing documents, tax receipts, insurance policies, proof of every payment made by me alone month after month. I stacked them neatly on the desk, my hand steadier with each page I laid down. Facts were my anchor. Paper didn't lie. Paper didn't manipulate. Paper didn't twist love into obligation. I heard a loud crash outside, something dropping. My stomach clenched. I rushed to the window in time to see a cardboard box split open on the porch. A framed picture slid out and shattered glass scattering across the wooden planks. Lydia groaned dramatically. "Seriously, can you be careful?" she snapped at the mover. The man apologized and bent down to gather the shards. I couldn't help noticing what the photo was: Lydia holding Piper, both of them smiling in front of a Christmas tree I had never been invited to stand beside. Someone had written "Family Forever" on the frame. Family forever, but only when it benefited them. Mom clapped her hands sharply. "Let's keep it moving. We still have a sofa and 2 dressers in the truck. We don't have all day. The word tasted bitter even in my mind. I closed the curtains before they noticed me watching. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Mrs. Rowan appeared on the screen. "Just checking on you, sweetheart." "Are you okay?" I typed back, "I'm handling it. Please don't let them talk to you or say things on my behalf." Her reply was immediate. "I won't, but they've been asking around the neighborhood all week." I froze. A cold prickle moved over my skin. All week I stared at those 2 words as if they might rearrange themselves into something less incriminating. But no matter how many times I reread them, the message was the same. This wasn't a spontaneous takeover. They had been preparing. A hollow feeling opened in my stomach. My family hadn't just impulsively decided to move into my home. They had surveyed the land, asked questions, spread stories, told the neighborhood they were expected here, maybe even intended to establish residency before confronting me. That's why they acted so confident. They believed they had a narrative ready to weaponize. A knock sounded at my door from outside, a hard, insistent rap. Mom's voice followed, muffled but sharp. "Mara, open this door. We need to put the mattresses inside before it gets damp." I stayed perfectly still. "Mara." She knocked again, harder. "Stop acting like a child. Let us in." I didn't speak. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Lydia's voice piped up next, high and biting. "This is so typical of you, always making things harder than they need to be. Just open the door." Footsteps shifted. Dad's voice replaced theirs, softer, but no less manipulative. "Mara, let's talk about this. Don't do something we all regret. There it was again. I stepped back into the hallway, away from the door, afraid my voice might carry. Let them think I wasn't home. Let them pound until they were tired. I wasn't opening anything. After a few minutes, the knocking stopped. Then I heard Dad say to Mom, "We'll try again later. She'll come around." No, I wouldn't. Not this time. I went back to the office and forced myself to sit down. My hands trembled as I reached for the mortgage papers again. I tried to focus on the words, the legalities, the date of purchase, but all I could see was the image of that shattered photo frame on my porch. Family forever. If forever meant endlessly taking, endlessly assuming, endlessly crossing boundaries, then forever wasn't love. It was ownership, and I was done being owned. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mara," a calm voice asked. "This is Deputy Hartman with the Cedar County Sheriff's Office. I'm returning your call from earlier." Relief flooded my chest. I sat straighter. "Yes, thank you for calling back. I need to know what my options are." He asked me to explain the situation, so I did, slowly, methodically, breathing through the tremors in my voice. I told him they had arrived uninvited with a moving truck. that they had entered my home, that they claimed it was family property, that I had asked them to leave and they refused. He asked questions, good ones. Is the mortgage in your name? Are they listed on the deed? Do they receive mail at your address? Have they lived there previously? Each answer was a firm no. Then he said the sentence that loosened something tight in my chest. Legally, they have no standing to occupy your residence. If they attempt to enter again without your permission, you can treat it as trespassing and call us immediately. He continued. But if they establish themselves inside, if they bring beds, personal items, and begin residing there, it becomes more complicated. Colorado law requires an eviction process if someone is considered an occupant. A chill crawled up my spine. That's why they had mattresses. That's why they had dressers. That's why they had food. That's why they had been confident. They were trying to establish residency. Deputy, I whispered, they came here planning to stay. A pause. Then I suggest preventing them from getting inside again. Document everything, and don't hesitate to call when they return. After I hung up, I sat frozen for a long moment. The pieces slid into place one by one, forming a picture so sinister it left me breathless. My family wasn't invading in a fit of misguided generosity. They were executing a step-by-step plan to take my house. I stood abruptly, my chair rolling back behind me. I gathered the paperwork into a neat pile, then walked downstairs. The cabin felt tighter, smaller, as if the walls themselves sensed the threat pressing against them. When I reached the living room, I hesitated before the window. Slowly, I pulled the curtain aside a fraction of an inch. Mom was standing by the truck, speaking animatedly to one of the movers while pointing toward the upper-level loft. Lydia was lifting Piper onto the porch railing, letting her balance dangerously on the edge while Owen clapped. Dad had drifted toward my garage, peering into the windows as though assessing tools and equipment he might claim as his. Their movements weren't chaotic. They were purposeful, coordinated, predatory. A wave of anger surged through me, sharp, pure cleansing. It didn't shake like fear. It didn't burn like panic. It simply rose steady and clear, filling spaces inside me I didn't know were empty. Enough. I let the curtain fall and turned away from the window. I wasn't going to let them take anything else from me. Not my home, not my peace, not my sense of belonging. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a voicemail notification. Curiosity tugged at me. I tapped to listen. Mom's voice filled the room tight with frustration. Mara, stop hiding. This is ridiculous. Your sister and the kids need a place, and you have plenty of space. We already told everyone we're moving up here. You need to stop being selfish and let this happen. I deleted it. Another voicemail played automatically, this time from Lydia. Mara, open the damn door. We're family. Families share. You don't get to isolate yourself like this. You're not better than us. I deleted that one too. The third was from Dad, calmer but heavier. Mara, for God's sake, just talk to us. Your mother is upset. The kids are confused. You can't keep doing this. Let us in. Delete. I didn't want their voices in my house anymore. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The noise outside rose and fell. Footsteps dropped boxes, the hum of the truck engine, kids laughing, Mom's orders slicing through the air. Then slowly, it quieted. I walked to the window again. The movers were closing the truck door. Mom was speaking with Dad, gesturing wildly. Lydia paced, phone pressed to her ear, annoyance tightening her shoulders. Then Lydia pointed directly at my front door and said something sharp. Dad nodded. And for one beat, all three of them stared at the house as if waiting for it to open itself. But it didn't. They didn't win this time. A strange, steadying calm washed over me. I looked toward the table where my deed and mortgage papers lay in a neat stack. Proof, truth, ownership. They weren't taking this from me. Not today, not ever. I picked up my phone and typed a new message to Mrs. Rowan. Thank you again. Please don't let them speak for me. They don't represent me. Her reply came quickly, warm and certain. Of course, dear. And Mara, you're doing the right thing. I exhaled shakily. Maybe for the first time in my life, I believed that too. I stood in the kitchen long enough for the sun to shift across the wooden floorboards, long enough for the hum of activity outside to settle into a rhythm that sounded too comfortable, too familiar. When I finally walked back toward the front of the house, something inside me slowed. I paused at the window, lifting the curtain just enough to see what waited outside. And there she was, my mother directing the movers toward the steps, as though she'd personally bought this land and built the cabin with her bare hands. Her finger jabbed toward the loft window. "Be careful with that one. It goes upstairs. My good dishes are in there." My heart thudded painfully. "Your good dishes," her voice carried across the yard like a command, not a request, and Lydia moved beneath it, carrying a box with a look of martyrdom, as if performing a heroic act rather than inserting herself into a life she had no right to. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself. Then I pushed open the front door. Everything stopped. My mother turned first, plastering on a smile that felt like a slap. Finally, she said, "You can help with the rest of the boxes. We need to get the mattresses in before the weather shifts." "No." The word came out quiet but solid, rooted in a place I didn't know I had. Everyone stop. A few movers froze mid-step. Lydia looked up sharply. My father paused at the foot of the porch, hands on his hips. But my mother only sighed as if inconvenienced. "Oh, Mara, don't start. We don't have time for one of your moods." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Get your things off my property." Lydia let out a mocking laugh. "Our property, Mara. Mom and Dad helped with the down payment." "Don't act like you did this alone." I stared at her. "They gave me $1,000. The mortgage is mine. The deed is mine. I pay the taxes. I pay for every inch of this place." Mom waved her hand dismissively. "You get so hung up on numbers. Family doesn't do math. Family shares. Family shares." My ribcage tightened at the hypocrisy. My entire life had been proof that family only shared when I was the one giving. I stepped forward. "You cannot move into my house." Lydia pressed her hand against her hip, eyebrow arched. "We're already here, and the kids love it. Why make a big deal out of something that helps everyone?" As if summoned, Owen came around the corner of the house, cheeks red with excitement. "Mommy, can we see the big window room now? Grandma said it's mine." Piper trailed behind him, clutching a pine cone. "Grandma said Auntie won't mind." The impact was sharp and immediate, as though someone had grabbed a taut string inside my chest and snapped it. They had told the kids they were moving in. They'd promised rooms, promised a home, promised belonging, all without asking me. I crouched slightly, looking Piper in the eyes. "Sweetheart, you can play in the yard for now, okay, but no one is moving in today?" Her little brow wrinkled. "Grandma said you'd try to stop us." My breath left in a single painful exhale. Lydia swooped in immediately, pulling Piper against her side. "Don't confuse them," she snapped. "They've had a long morning." My mother stepped closer, planting herself on the porch step like a queen ascending her throne. "This is happening, Mara. You're the only one making it unpleasant." I straightened. "I want everyone off my property." Dad finally joined the circle, shaking his head with theatrical disappointment. "Mara, we talked about this." "No," I cut in sharply. "You talked about it, to yourselves, before ever speaking to me." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. For a brief flickering moment, I saw something like guilt in his eyes, before it hardened into annoyance. My mother pointed toward the moving truck. "We're not doing this. You're overwhelmed. Go inside, collect yourself, and when you come back out, we'll finish. Finish. As if this were a remodel, a group project, a cooperation. This isn't yours," I said. My voice cracking only slightly. Mom rolled her eyes. "Everything that belongs to a family member belongs to the family. That's how we raised you." "No," I whispered. "It's how you drained me." A box slipped in a mover's hands, landing with a soft thud as the tension rippled outward. Lydia crossed her arms, tilting her head in that condescending way she'd perfected years ago. "Wow, dramatic much." I felt the pressure behind my eyes, the burning urge to scream, to cry, to wilt under their collective expectations the way I always had. But instead, something steadier rose, anger shaped into clarity. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done being used. I'm done being the one who gives while everyone else takes. Get off my property." My mother's face hardened. "You're having one of your tantrums." The word hit me like a slap. Tantrum. A label they'd slapped onto me every time I tried to protect myself, whenever I resisted lending money, whenever I declined a last-minute babysitting request, whenever I dared to say no. Tantrum. But this time I didn't shrink. "I'm going inside," I told them, "and when I come back out, I expect you all to be gone." Mom scoffed. "Sweetheart, this is happening whether you approve or not." I turned, stepping over the threshold of my home. Behind me, Lydia muttered loudly, "She's embarrassing herself." Dad's voice followed softer but cutting, "Let her cool off. She'll cave." I closed the door and locked it. Their muffled indignation vibrated through the wood. I stepped back, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. This was the first boundary I'd set in years, and they were pounding on it already. A fist slammed against the door. "Mara, open this right now," Mom shouted. "We have mattresses out here. I'm not opening," I said loud enough for them to hear. "God," Lydia groaned. "You are impossible." Dad's voice came next. "Talk to us. Don't escalate." I backed away until my legs hit the couch. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from the unfamiliar sensation of not giving in. I wiped my palms on my jeans, pacing. I needed to check the back door, the garage, the deck door. They knew too many ways into this house. I hurried through the cabin, locking every window, sliding every bolt. My breath quickened as I checked the mudroom. The lock held tight. Then I checked the basement door, its frame old but strong. I pressed my palm to the cool wood. No one was coming in. Not today. Returning to the living room, I glanced at the curtains and pulled them closed. The walls vibrated faintly with shouts, outside voices rising and falling, incredulous that I wasn't bending, wasn't folding the way I always had. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. A text from Mrs. Rowan. "They told the UPS guy earlier that they're moving in permanently." I didn't say anything. My throat tightened. Permanently. They had rehearsed this. They had distributed the story. They had spread it like seeds across the community, ensuring it would sprout into something believable before I had a chance to deny it. I typed back with trembling fingers. "Thank you for letting me know. Please don't engage with them. They're not speaking for me." She responded, "I know. And if you need anything at all, you call me." Warmth pricked my eyes. The quiet kind of warmth that comes when someone believes you without requiring proof. A voice boomed from outside, jarring me back into the moment. "Mara," my father shouted, "this is your last chance before we bring in the furniture." I exhaled slowly. They weren't going to stop. They weren't going to reconsider. They weren't going to treat this as anything other than their right. I walked to the center of the living room, listening to the muffled chaos outside. Then, with steady hands, I reached for my phone again. Deputy Hartman's number was still near the top of the call log, but I didn't dial him. Not yet. First, I needed to create space to think. Space they couldn't intrude on. I sat down on the floor, crossed my legs, and closed my eyes. This is mine. The cabin creaked softly as the wind pressed against its walls, a familiar grounding sound. The smell of pine sap drifted in through the cracked window frame. For a moment it was just me and the mountains and the heartbeat of a place I had chosen for myself. Then a loud scrape jolted me upright. Someone trying the back door. My pulse spiked. I ran to the hallway and heard Lydia's voice faintly on the other side of the house. She locked it. "Check the garage." I swallowed a surge of panic and whispered into the empty air, "It's okay. They're not getting in." Still, I moved from window to window, ensuring every latch was tight. Outside, they regrouped. Mom yelled something unintelligible. Dad argued with her. The movers stood around awkwardly, unsure whether to keep hauling or get in their truck and run. The tension thickened into something nearly tangible, like the moment before a thunderstorm splits open the sky. I returned to the door and pressed my back against it. Their shadows moved beneath the gap at the bottom, restless, impatient, entitled. Mara Mom called voice, suddenly sweet syrupy in a way that made my skin crawl. Honey, open the door. We can talk. I didn't move. Don't be unreasonable, she continued. We'll get along just fine once everything's settled. I closed my eyes. Then, clear, as if whispered directly into my ear, I heard Lydia say the words that locked everything into place. You don't get to call cops on your own family. My eyes opened slowly. I wasn't sure if they were daring me or warning me. Either way, the decision was already made. I wasn't letting them inside. Not now, not ever. I stepped away from the door, gripping my phone, and whispered into the quiet, if I have to fight, then I will. And for the first time, I truly meant it. The morning the locksmith was scheduled to arrive, the mountain was wrapped in a pale, silvery fog that muffled every sound. It made the cabin feel suspended in a quiet pocket of air, like the world was holding its breath with me. I hadn't slept, not really. I'd closed my eyes, but my mind replayed every moment from the day before: my mother's commands, my father's disappointment, Lydia's entitlement, their boxes crossing my threshold, their voices claiming what wasn't theirs. By sunrise, the fog began to slide down the slope, revealing thin beams of golden light. I stood at the front door, staring at the driveway, waiting for the first sign of Walter's truck. That's when I noticed the glove. A single black leather glove sat on the porch step, damp with dew. Out of place, out of context. I bent down and picked it up with 2 fingers. It wasn't mine, it wasn't left by the movers. And it wasn't the kind of glove worn by hikers passing through. My throat tightened. Someone had been close to the house, close enough to drop this with no reason to be on my property. The sheriff's words replayed in my head. Keep them from getting inside. I set the glove on the porch railing, forcing my breath to slow. It didn't matter who had dropped it. After today, no one would be getting inside again. At exactly 7:48 a.m., a dusty brown pickup rumbled up my driveway. A man in his early 50s stepped out, shoulders broad, his tool belt hanging low. He had a calm demeanor, the kind people in the mountains carry like second nature. His name stitched onto his work shirt read, Walter. He gave me a polite nod. Morning, ma'am. Heard you need every lock replaced? I nodded. Every single one. He tilted his head slightly, the question unspoken. Family trouble. He didn't ask it out loud, but I saw it in his eyes. Maybe he'd seen it before. Maybe mountain homes brought out the worst in people who wanted what wasn't theirs. Yes, I finally said. Family trouble. He didn't push further. I'll start with the front, then the back doors, then the side entry and basement. Shouldn't take long. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a shred of relief. Small, fragile, but real. As he unpacked his tools, I stepped aside, letting him begin. The metallic clicks of the drill sounded like punctuation marks, each one a quiet declaration. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. I hovered nearby, unsure whether to help or anxiously supervise. The cabin creaked as the temperature changed, the old pine siding expanding in the morning light. Walter worked efficiently, unscrewing old bolts, inserting new deadbolts, testing them twice with calm precision. You picked a beautiful place up here, he said as he tightened a hinge. Wish I had a place like this. I swallowed, unsure how to respond. Thank you. It was a dream of mine. He looked over at me briefly. Always someone trying to take the things we work hardest for. My chest tightened, not because he meant anything specific, but because the truth of that sentence hit deeper than he probably realized. I nodded. Yes, exactly. He didn't pry, didn't ask for details. Instead, he simply moved to the next door. But as he rounded the cabin toward the back, I followed, and that's when we both noticed the SUV. An unfamiliar older model SUV sat idling at the edge of the drive, its windows tinted dark. It faced the cabin but didn't pull in. It just sat there. Walter noticed it too. Friend of yours, no. The SUV lingered for another long second. Then it rolled slowly down the hill, disappearing around the bend. My stomach dropped. Lydia. It had to be. She had probably driven by to see if I'd opened the door, or if I'd changed my mind, or if the locks were still the same. But she would be disappointed. The locks were changing. Walter glanced at me but didn't comment. Instead, he finished the back door and moved on to the basement entry. This one's old, he said, tapping the frame. I'll reinforce it. Please do. While he worked, I walked back inside and pulled out every important document I owned: deed, mortgage, tax statements, insurance policy. I laid them across the dining table in neat rows, the official paper forming a barrier between truth and the lies my family had been spreading. As I ran my finger across the embossed seal of the deed, something in me hardened. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't being selfish. I wasn't being unreasonable. I was defending my home. A quiet knock sounded at the open front door. I turned quickly, heart pounding. Mrs. Rowan stood there, hands clutching a small container covered with foil. Her face was warm, though worry softened the corners of her eyes. I baked muffins, she said gently. Thought you might need something to eat. My shoulders loosened a fraction. Thank you. She stepped inside, glancing around. I saw the truck. Good idea, smart girl. I exhaled shakily. I found a glove on the porch this morning. Her brows knitted together. A glove. What kind of glove? Leather. Men's. Not from the movers. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Well, I didn't want to worry you, but last night I thought I heard someone on your property. Ice slid through my chest. Last night, she nodded. Around 11. My dogs started barking, so I looked out the back window. Didn't see anything, but I felt something. Like someone was watching. Yes. Exactly. My pulse quickened. Lydia drove by this morning. I think it was her. Or someone else from the family, she murmured. A heavy quiet settled between us. Not fear, not panic, just an understanding one that acknowledged the truth I'd been trying not to face. They're not done, I whispered. No, she agreed softly. But you're not alone. I swallowed hard. Thank you for saying that. She placed a hand on my arm. You did the right thing yesterday, dear. Boundaries help everyone see the truth, even if they don't like it. Before I could respond, the metallic clink of Walter's tools sounded again outside. Mrs. Rowan squeezed my arm once more. I'll let you finish. Call me if you need anything. After she left, I carried the muffins to the counter and stared at them, feeling something odd and bittersweet stirring in me. Support. The simple, quiet kind. It had been a long time since I felt it. By the time Walter finished the last door, the sun was sharper, melting through the fog and warming the deck. All set, he said, handing me 3 new keys on a metal ring. Front, back, side, basement. Every lock's changed, deadbolts reinforced. I took the keys, feeling their weight like armor. Thank you. He nodded, wiping his hands on a cloth. If anyone tries to get in now, you'll know. And if they come back, don't open the door. Call the sheriff. His voice held no judgment, only caution born of experience. I will, I said. He tipped his cap and left his truck rolling down the driveway until it disappeared into the trees. For a moment I stood there alone, holding the keys against my chest. They felt cold in my palm, unfamiliar but powerful. My house was safe again, at least for now. Inside, my phone buzzed with a new message. I almost ignored it, but something in me compelled me to check. It was from my mother. A different number. She'd used another phone. Mara, you need to stop this. We are family. We will not be pushed out. This is our home too. My throat clenched as I typed only 5 words. Do not come back here. I locked the screen before another response could appear. The house felt brighter than it had yesterday. Airier. More mine. I drifted through the living room, up the stairs into the loft, touching the railings, the window frames, the furniture I'd saved years to buy. Nothing was being taken today. Nothing was being claimed. but peace was fragile. Even as I walked the quiet rooms, the shadows along the wall reminded me that locks could be changed, but intentions didn't dissolve that easily. That glove wasn't an accident. That SUV wasn't random. That silence from my family wasn't surrender. This was the beginning of a longer fight, a fight for my home, my boundaries, my right to say no. But as I stood at the window looking down at the empty driveway, something steadier rose inside me. Not panic, not exhaustion, resolve. I closed the curtains, tightened my grip on the keys, and whispered into the quiet cabin, "You don't get to take this from me. Not anymore." And for the first time, the house felt like it agreed. My phone began buzzing before I even made it downstairs the next morning. At first, it blended into the ordinary sounds of the cabin, the creak of old wood, the soft whisper of wind against the siding. But it didn't stop. It kept vibrating again and again until a knot formed in my stomach. I set my coffee mug on the counter and finally looked. 8 missed calls from Mom, 5 from Dad, 11 text messages from Lydia, and more numbers I didn't recognize, likely cousins, aunts, neighbors they had recruited. A fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. I hadn't even opened a single message yet. I clicked on Mom's first. "Mara, you embarrassed all of us yesterday. Fix this now. Fix this." As if I had done something wrong. The next message from her came seconds later, almost frantic. "The kids didn't sleep last night because of you. You need to think about someone besides yourself, besides myself." The irony almost made me laugh. I scrolled further. "If you don't answer, we will have no choice but to take action. Take action." There it was, the threat tucked neatly between guilt and manipulation. I clicked Lydia's thread next. Her messages were longer as always. She never used 10 words when she could use 200. "I can't believe you locked your own family out. Do you understand how cruel that was?" Owen asked why you hate us. I didn't know what to tell him. You never let us in literally or emotionally. Maybe this is who you really are. Then we weren't trying to take anything from you. We were trying to build something with you. But you're too selfish to see it. Then, a few lines later, "If you don't let us move in, we will take the next step." My breath caught. The next step. I didn't know what that meant yet, but a chill ran through me. My family didn't make empty threats. They escalated until they got what they wanted. The phone rang suddenly, one of the random numbers. I answered without thinking. "Mara, how could you do this to your mother?" my Aunt Caroline shouted. "She told us you shoved them out like strangers." I blinked, stunned. "I what? That's not true. They tried to move into my house without asking. They brought a truck. They invited themselves." "That's not what she said," Aunt Caroline snapped. "She said you threw your own niece and nephew onto the street." My throat tightened. "They live with my parents, Caroline. They have a home." "Well, she sniffed your mother didn't tell it that way. Of course she didn't." I hung up before she could continue. Another call came, then another. Every ring chipped away at something inside me. Every accusation scraped against old wounds that had never healed properly. I set the phone face down on the table and walked to the window. The mountains looked peaceful, unaware of the storm building in my messages. But the silence around me didn't ease anything. My body felt charged, restless, braced for something more. When the phone rang again, I ignored it, but after the 4th time I recognized the number, my father's cell. I took a breath and picked up. "Mara," he said. His voice came out heavy, worn. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying since yesterday. Your sister's beside herself. The kids are confused. Here it comes. You need to fix this." I pressed my fingers into my temple. "There's nothing to fix. You all had no right to come here. None." He sighed the way people sigh when they think they're the reasonable party. "We're family. Families take care of each other." "I've taken care of this family my entire life," I said quietly. He paused, thrown off for a second, then continued. "Look, we've already planned a move-in day. Saturday. Let's not make this ugly. Saturday." They were still coming. They were treating my boundary like a suggestion. I closed my eyes. "Dad, if you come on Saturday, I'll call the sheriff." Silence, a long one. Then he said, voice cool and disappointed, "This is not how we raised you." I ended the call. The weight of his words lingered like a bruise forming beneath the skin. I stood there in the middle of my kitchen, staring at the wooden floor until the knots in the grain blurred. This wasn't over. This was barely the beginning. I needed air. I grabbed a sweater and stepped outside. The crisp bite of the mountain wind hit me instantly, but it was grounding. I stood on the porch, inhaling deeply. From down the road I heard the crunch of footsteps. I looked up to see Mrs. Rowan walking toward me, holding a small basket, as if she were delivering peace offerings. "I thought you might want some fresh bread," she said, lifting the basket slightly. "You didn't come out yesterday after they left." Her kindness nearly undid me. "Thank you. It's been a lot." She nodded sympathetically. "I can only imagine." We stood there quietly for a moment. The wind rustled through the pines. Then she said, almost reluctantly, "I didn't mention this yesterday, but your mother came by earlier in the week. She asked me how often you're away for work." My breath hitched. "What? And your sister was driving around the neighborhood 2 or 3 times a day the past week. I thought she was just visiting, but now I'm not sure." A slow dread unfurled in my chest. They were scouting. Mrs. Rowan hesitated, then nodded. "I think so." I pressed my hands to my face. It wasn't impulsive, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't even about need. They strategized this. They had made a plan. "I'm so sorry, dear," she said softly. I lowered my hands. "No, thank you for telling me." She lingered another moment, then gave my arm a gentle squeeze. "You're not wrong for setting boundaries, Mara. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She walked away, leaving the scent of warm bread and a faint trace of comfort behind her. When I went inside, the phone buzzed again. This time it was Jess, my coworker. "You okay? You didn't sound great yesterday." I debated lying. I debated brushing it off. But I typed the truth. My family tried to move into my house. There was a pause. "Then, what, like..." "Permanently, yes. Holy crap. Do you need anything? Do you want me to come up there?" "No, I just needed to say it out loud. Talk anytime, okay?" I stared at her message for a long moment, grateful in a way I didn't know how to express. But the gratitude didn't erase the gnawing fear beneath it. Because after Jess's message, the phone finally stopped vibrating. Completely. And that bothered me more than anything. My mother always escalated. She always responded. She always had a last word, a final guilt trip, a new tactic. The silence meant she was strategizing. The silence meant she was planning something bigger. I tried to keep working that afternoon. I sat at my drafting table opening the design files for the new cabin project near Rocky Ridge. I tried to focus on the pitch deck due next week, but every time a pine branch brushed the window or the floorboards shifted under their own weight, I jolted. My concentration frayed like an old rope. Late in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with one new text from my father's number, but the tone was unmistakably my mother's. "Move-in day is Saturday. We're still coming." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. I set the phone down carefully, as if it might shatter in my hand. My ears rang, my throat closed. My heartbeat thudded so loudly I could feel it in my jaw. They weren't reconsidering. They weren't backing down. They were doubling down. A storm rose outside, fast-moving clouds rolling over the peaks, casting long shadows over the cabin. The wind howled low through the pines, sending needles drifting across the deck. As I watched the storm build, my resolve crystallized. I wasn't going to wait until Saturday to see what happened. I poured myself a glass of water and walked outside to the porch. For a long few seconds I just stood there, letting the cold sting my face. Then I whispered, "I won't let them do this." I didn't know yet exactly how I would stop them. But I knew the locks were only the beginning. That evening, as the sky darkened and the storm winds rattled the windows, I wrote a list on the back of an old grocery receipt: "Call sheriff if they return." Document everything. Block their numbers. Prepare paperwork. Be ready. My handwriting wavered, but my intent didn't. Just as I set the note on the counter, my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. I clicked it open. If you think locks will stop us, you're delusional. No name, no signature. But I knew exactly who it was. I turned the phone over screen face down on the counter. Then I walked to the window, staring out into the dark curve of the mountain road, and said quietly to myself, "They're planning something. But so am I." I woke before dawn on Saturday with a heaviness in my chest that felt almost physical. The wind outside pushed against the cabin walls in long, hollow moans, as if the mountain itself sensed what was coming. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands clasped, staring at the soft orange glow rising behind the ridge. My coffee went cold untouched on the nightstand. Today was the day they said they would come. Move-in day. I made my way downstairs, each creak of the wooden steps echoing through the silence. I spread the paperwork across the kitchen table again. The deed, the mortgage, the tax statements, the insurance policy. My own armor laid out in rows of neat legal language. My phone vibrated. A text message from Mom, time-stamped 5:42 a.m. "We're leaving now. Have the front door unlocked." I stared at the words until my vision blurred. Not a question, not a request, an order. The sun was barely above the treetops when the rumble of an engine drifted up the hill. I stepped to the window just as the white moving truck appeared around the bend, followed closely by my parents' SUV and Lydia's minivan. The three vehicles pulled into my driveway in a tight formation as if they were an invading force. Doors opened, bodies spilled out. Owen was the first to shout, "We're home, Grandma said we live here now." My pulse stuttered painfully. Piper twirled in the driveway, lifting her arms as if welcoming mountain air into her lungs. Mom began directing immediately. "Mattresses go inside first, don't scratch the frame." Harold grabbed that box from Lydia's trunk. Lydia slammed her door shut and marched toward my house without hesitation, ponytail swinging. "Let's just get this done," she told the movers. "She'll calm down." I stepped onto the porch, gripping the railing so tightly the wood dug into my palms. "Stop," I said, trying to steady my voice. "No one is going inside." Mom froze mid-step. Slowly, she turned. "Mara, don't be ridiculous. We talked about this." "No," I said. "You talked about it. To yourselves, without me." Dad approached, jaw tight. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "This is trespassing," I said. "I asked you not to come." "That's not how family works," Mom snapped. "Unlock the door." "No." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Lydia marched up the porch steps and grabbed the doorknob. She twisted it. Locked. She tried again, harder this time. When the knob didn't budge, she yanked on it and turned toward Dad. She changed the locks. Mom gasped dramatically. "You changed your locks. On your own, family, you tried to break into my home," I said. "Yes, I changed the locks." Lydia let out a harsh laugh. "You are unbelievable." Piper tugged Lydia's sleeve. "Mommy, why won't Auntie let us inside?" I felt something within me splinter. Not break, just shift. These children were being used as shields, as leverage. But I didn't bend, because I said gently, "This isn't your home." Mom's face darkened. "We're not doing this." Harold checked the back. Dad hesitated, then walked around the house. A moment later, I heard him rattling the back door, then the mudroom, then the basement entry. "They're all locked," he yelled. "Of course they're locked," I called back. One of the movers whispered something to another, clearly uncomfortable. Owen kicked a pine cone. Piper sat on a rock, confused small hands folded in her lap. Mom stormed up the steps and stopped inches from my face. "This is not okay." "We have a truck full of furniture, Mara. We're moving in." "You agreed I never agreed," I said, voice low. "Not once." "You misunderstand everything," she said, jabbing her finger toward my chest. "We're saving you from loneliness. You're wasting this place living up here by yourself. This is my home," I repeated. "It's family property," she argued. "We contributed $1,000, I said, 3 years ago. A gift, not a loan." Mom's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. It gave us a stake in this home. No, I said. It didn't. Lydia dragged another box from the truck and threw it onto the ground. The tape ripped open on impact, spilling toys and framed photos across the dirt. A picture of her with Piper slid toward my feet. Someone had written "Home Sweet Home" in glitter marker across the bottom. The symbolism was suffocating. Pick that up, Mom barked at the movers. She's being dramatic. We'll get inside soon enough. Families adjust. My breath left me in a single violent exhale. I stepped back inside the cabin, shut the door, and locked it again. Their voices rose into a chaotic chorus outside. Mom pounding, Lydia shouting, Dad cursing under his breath. The movers standing awkwardly. My pulse thudded in my throat. I walked backward into the living room, trying to steady my shaking hands. This was it. The moment the deputy had warned me about. I grabbed my phone and dialed the sheriff's office. Cedar County Sheriff, how can I help you? There are people attempting to enter my home, I said. My voice strangely calm. I told them not to come. They refused to leave. Is anyone inside with you? No. They're outside. Do they have weapons? No, I said, but they have a moving truck and they're trying to force entry. We'll send deputies, the dispatcher said. Stay inside. Do not engage. I hung up. Outside, Mom banged so hard on the door that it shook in its frame. Mara, open this door. We're not doing this. You are trespassing, I called back. I am asking you to leave. You are humiliating us in front of strangers, she yelled. You're humiliating yourselves, I said quietly. Minutes passed. Then sirens. The sound echoed up the slope, bouncing off the pines, growing louder as 2 police cruisers climbed the hill. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees, casting fractured colors across the cabin walls. Lydia swore under her breath. Dad stepped back from the porch. Mom's eyes widened with something between fear and outrage. The cruisers stopped. 2 deputies got out. Deputy Hartman approached the porch. Good morning, he said, firm but not unkind. We received a report of trespassing. Mom immediately pointed at me. Our daughter is having an episode. This is a misunderstanding. Deputy Hartman lifted a hand. Ma'am, I need to ask. Do you live here? Mom blinked rapidly. We're moving in today. This is family. Do you live here? He repeated. No, she said tightly, but we have a right to be here. Do you have documentation proving ownership? Dad stepped forward. We helped her buy the place. That's not what I asked, the deputy said. He turned to the door. Miss, are you inside? I unlocked the door and stepped out, folder in hand. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but I stood tall. I'm the owner, I said. I have the deed, mortgage, tax, documents, insurance policy. I handed the folder to Deputy Hartman. He flipped through the pages carefully. These are all in your name. Yes. Mom lunged forward. She stole this house. We gave her money. The deputy raised an eyebrow. Do you have any documents proving shared ownership or a loan agreement? Mom opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Lydia's face twisted. You're taking her side. You don't understand, ma'am, the second deputy said, stepping between us. What we understand is the documentation. And the documentation says this is not your property. But we're family, Mom cried. And she has asked you to leave, Deputy Hartman said calmly. Multiple times. Dad's jaw clenched. We're not the bad guys here. Deputy Hartman lifted the folder again. This is her legal residence. If you enter without permission, it is trespassing. If you attempt to force entry, it becomes breaking and entering. The words hit the air like hammer blows. Owen began crying. Piper clung to Lydia's leg. Lydia glared at me through the tears. How could you do this? I looked at her, my voice low but steady. You don't get to take my home. Mom's face contorted with rage. You will regret this, Mara. Deputy Hartman stepped between us, voice steel. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to gather your belongings and leave the property immediately. Dad muttered something under his breath but nodded stiffly. The deputies stood by while Lydia and Mom collected the scattered boxes, while Dad helped the movers load everything back into the truck. The entire time Mom glared at me as if I'd betrayed some sacred vow, as if boundaries were betrayal, as if autonomy was cruelty. When they finally got into their vehicles, Dad rolled down his window just long enough to say, "This isn't over." Then they drove away. The sirens faded, first the engines next, and finally the rumble of the moving truck dissolved into the mountain silence. I stood on the porch gripping the railing. My hands were cold, my breath shook. But beneath the shakiness was something fiercer, relief, resolve, a kind of victory I'd never tasted before. Deputy Hartman returned the folder. "Would you like to file a formal trespassing report?" "Yes," I said. He nodded. "We'll document everything." After they left, the porch felt impossibly quiet. The air was cold and sharp, carrying the clean scent of pine sap. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle over me. Two things were certain: they would be back, and I would be ready. The silence that settled after the police left felt strangely heavy, like the air inside the cabin had thickened with everything unspoken. I paced the living room, unable to sit, unable to rest, my mind spinning through every detail of the morning. Their faces, their voices. The disbelief in my mother's eyes as the deputies told her to leave. The anger simmering behind my father's tight jaw. Lydia's glare, the kind that promised retaliation. I kept waiting for the adrenaline to fade, for my hands to stop trembling, but the tremor stayed, because none of this was over. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. I forced myself not to look. I already knew the messages would be laced with accusation, guilt, and threats. I wasn't ready to read any of it. I finally collapsed onto the couch, folding my knees to my chest. The room was too quiet now, the ticking of the old wall clock too loud. I kept replaying one detail I hadn't been able to forget: how easily they'd expected to walk inside. How confidently they'd spoken as though this home belonged to them. How certain they were of their right to my space. And the worst part, the part that made my stomach twist, was how a small part of me expected to cave. To apologize. To smooth everything over so I wouldn't be the villain in their story. But I hadn't. And now the consequences were coming. By late afternoon, the silence outside had become oppressive, but inside my phone was anything but quiet. When I finally picked it up, 47 missed messages filled the screen. Mom: "You humiliated us. Everyone saw what you did." Dad: "This isn't over." Lydia: "I hope the cabin keeps you warm when you're old and alone. The kids don't want to see you again." I closed the message thread. It didn't hurt the way it used to. It was sharp, yes, but no longer capable of sinking deep. Something inside me had shifted too far to be dragged back. Late that evening, I walked outside with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The mountains were still, the moon bright against the dark sky. I sat on the porch steps and let the cold air sting my cheeks. For the first time, I whispered the thought aloud. I'm done letting them take pieces of me. It felt like a promise. A quiet one, but real. The next day, I returned to work. The office felt jarringly normal after the chaos of the weekend, the scent of burnt coffee, the low murmur of coworkers chatting, the tapping of keyboards. But the tightness in my chest hadn't lifted. Jess slid into the chair beside me during lunch break. "You look exhausted." "Are you okay?" I hesitated. Then I told her the truth. My family tried to move into my house. She froze with her sandwich halfway to her mouth, like, permanently. "Yes." She blinked. "Holy, are they insane?" "I think so," I said softly. She leaned forward. "What did you do?" "I called the sheriff." Her eyes widened. Then she nodded with something like pride. "Good. Seriously good. Boundaries, Mara. This is huge for you." I sighed. It doesn't feel huge. It feels terrifying. That's usually how huge things feel. Her support warmed something in me that had been cold for a long time. But the warmth didn't last. Halfway through the afternoon, my office phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered cautiously. "This is Mara." A clipped woman's voice replied, "Hello, Ms. Monroe. This is Officer Riley with Cedar County Child Protective Services." My blood turned cold. Child Protective, what we received a report yesterday regarding concerns about 2 minor children, Owen and Piper Monroe. The report states that their aunt forcibly removed them from a stable home environment and denied them a place to live, resulting in potential homelessness. My pulse roared in my ears. No, I whispered. No, none of that is true. This is why I'm calling, Officer Riley said. We need your statement to clarify what happened at your residence. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so hard it creaked. My family had weaponized CPS, using the kids as ammunition, using government resources to punish me. I swallowed hard. I'm the one who called the police. They tried to move into my home without permission. The children live with their mother and grandparents. They were never homeless. Officer Riley took notes. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Based on your statement and the initial police report, this appears to be a family dispute, not a child endangerment issue. But if we receive additional reports, we may need to follow up. I pressed my free hand to my forehead, meaning my family could keep calling. Unfortunately, yes. But repeated false reports carry consequences. I just need you to be aware. After she hung up, I sat frozen in my chair. Shame, anger, disbelief. They blended together until I couldn't tell which feeling was which. I stared at my hands trembling above my keyboard. Jess stopped beside my desk. Hey, what happened? They called CPS, I said hollowly. They said I made the kids homeless. She inhaled sharply. That's evil. That's not even manipulative anymore. That's malicious. I nodded numbly. They'll keep escalating. Then you'll keep protecting yourself, she said firmly. You're not alone. Her words steadied me, but only slightly. Even when I returned home, the cabin felt less safe. Not because the locks weren't strong, they were, but because the threat wasn't physical anymore. It was something else. Something unhinged and unpredictable. That night, my father showed up. I heard the crunch of gravel around 6 just as the sun slipped behind the ridge. My stomach tightened as I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there with his hands shoved in his jacket pockets, head lowered. I opened the door halfway but kept my body blocking the entrance. Dad, I said quietly. He exhaled, his breath visible in the cold air. Can we talk? I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Talk, I said. But you're not coming inside. He nodded slowly as though bracing himself. Your mother's convinced you hate us. I don't hate you, I said. I just need boundaries. She's hurting, he said. She hasn't stopped crying. And Lydia, Dad, I interrupted. We're not doing the guilt thing right now. He ran a hand over his face. This could have gone differently. Yes, I said. If you had asked me, if you had respected my home. We were trying to help you, he said. You're isolated here. We didn't want you to end up alone. You mean you wanted a free house? His expression tightened. That's not fair. It's the truth.